up, guys? I'm Angela Yee from Way Up with Angela Yee, and I am so excited today to start these Priceless Conversations. This is our first episode, and we have quite the panel for you guys today. And what I'm excited about the most is that we are actually going to be giving you the tools that you need to talk about demystifying Black wealth. And there is nobody better for these conversations than who we have here today. So I'm going to go around the room and introduce you all one by one. So we'll start with Rachel Rogers. Now, Rachel Rogers is the CEO of Hello 7, but also a business coach and also a national best-selling author. We should all be millionaires.
Yes.
All right. So give us some background information, Rachel, on how you got to where you are.
Yes. Well, I grew up low income in Queens here in New York, and I just watched my parents struggle, and I didn't want to struggle that same way. So I was very focused on finding a way to get myself out and build wealth. And now that I've done that, what I do at Hello 7 is teach others how to do the same, how they can use entrepreneurship to build wealth.
Mm-hmm. And you also have a podcast, so people can always tune into that as well.
Yes, the Hello 7 podcast. We're dropping gems every day. More books are coming, all the things, whatever I can do to help.
All right, we love that. All right, and then Samantha Tweedy is joining us. You guys, by the way, all look amazing. I just have to put that out here first and foremost. But you're the CEO of the Black Economic Alliance, and you have quite a background when it comes to finance and this type of work. So can you just give us some information on the Black Economic Alliance Foundation and what you do?
Absolutely. It is good to be here. I'm the CEO of a coalition of Black business leaders who came together really with one single focus. How do we make sure that we can advance Black work, wages, and wealth? And do so by leveraging partnerships across government and philanthropy. So I come from a long line of activists, and my grandfather was leading sit-ins at the Walgreens counters, 20 years before the storied sit-ins of the civil rights movement. And so that's the voice that's always in my ear. And sometimes smiling down at the work that we are all doing to advance Black economic opportunity, but also sometimes looking at the reality that in so many ways we are still fighting the same fights today that he was fighting. And so I'm thrilled to be in this conversation, particularly focused on how we build wealth.
Yes. And as you can see, these are all forward-facing conversations because this is also giving you information, giving you tangibles, giving you things you can do. This is all about, not thinking about what we don't have, but thinking about how we can achieve. Right. And to that end, the reason that we are all here, Salah Goss is here with us. Thank you so much for joining us. And you are the Senior Vice President of Mastercard, but also a financial inclusion expert. So can you just give us some information on what all of this means?
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for being here. This is part of a series for a program in solidarity. And I'll start there. But I'll say that Mastercard has a long history of inclusion. So In Solidarity started in 2020. We jumped on the opportunity to address the wealth gap in the US for Black Americans. But we're not new to this, right? It's in our DNA. From the beginning, when we IPO'd in 2006, we started the Mastercard Foundation. 2015, we made a pledge with the World Bank to include 500 million people in the economy. We're now up to the pledge of 1 billion. We have commitments for entrepreneurs, for women, and so how can you think about inclusive growth in the U.S. if you don't focus on equity? So the program started in 2020. Samantha is one of our partners. We have great partners around the country, and when we began, we did a couple of things. First thing we did, we said, how can we do this authentically? So In Solidarity, and you'll hear it here in the series through the series we're doing, focuses on small business and entrepreneurship. It focuses on financial health and wealth, as this conversation is on. And then we picked 7 cities where we knew that we could have an impact and kind of go deep. And so we picked those pillars, and then also we focus on our partners. Okay. So being authentic is great. So those pillars allow us to keep going. And then our partners, Samantha's one, in proximity, to make sure that we were really addressing the issues. So that's what we're addressing here is In Solidarity, but making the point that we've been focused on inclusion for a long time.
Yes.
And we will keep focusing on it, but happy to have this conversation.
And I told you this on the conversation before we even sat down today. What I love about Mastercard and the In Solidarity program is there's a lot of people that have tried to come up with programs and then they've done away with those programs, but Mastercard is doubling down. And so we definitely appreciate that and notice that because a lot of corporations we could work with, we have to look at what's going on behind the scenes and who they have in position. Right. And so we appreciate that.
Can I add something to that?
Yes.
Part of the reason why we are able to continue is that authenticity piece. And part of that is good for our business. It sounds selfish,
Right.
but it's real.
I like that you
Yes.
say that because people will act like DEI is a favor or a handout, but it is good for business.
That is exactly
It's
right.
good for
It's
business.
proven.
That.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't have everyone in the economy, it doesn't function. We'll get into this later, but whether it's in tech, in small business, if you don't have populations in those areas functioning, contributing to GDP, we all lose.
Right.
So with
Yes.
Mastercard, we're here to make sure everybody has equal access to the digital economy. So why would we ignore a group, especially a group who is generating genius and ingenuity and profit? And so I
Yes.
think part of the reason we're able to keep doing this is because it's straight up and down aligned with our business, and we know it's good for everybody.
Right. Okay. See, it
I
ain't-
love it.
That's right.
I want to make sure we stress that because people will
Yes.
make you feel like, oh, they're giving you it's not just a favor. It's also good for the bottom line.
That's right. And it makes it sustainable, right? You can continue on with it when it works with the business as well.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right. Well, along those lines, Samantha, let's start with you. Based on the Black Economic Alliance, I'm going to just say BEA.
There you go.
Moving forward. But based on research, what is the true cost of the wealth gap, particularly for the Black community?
Yeah. So I think there's two ways to look at this. We have to look at the numbers, right? Because as Black Americans, we are still on the losing end of a 6-to-1 racial wealth gap. And that is very meaningful in terms of Black families, Black children's ability to thrive. But at the same time, we have to think about what wealth really means, right? So many folks, when you talk about wealth, they start picturing lavish vacation homes and
Yes.
yachts, right? Nothing wrong with that. But the definition of wealth is simply owning more than you owe.
Yes.
Okay.
And we have to think about the fact that we need to be at a place in this country where that is no longer the exception, but the norm for Black folks. And what we know is that when you get at this question of the true cost, owning more than you owe isn't just about what's in your pocketbook or your bank account or what you're passing down to your kids. It's about the freedom that comes with that autonomy to make those own choices about your life. And so at the end of the day, wealth is about power. And we need to think about how that true cost of ownership, let me just give you one data point. You look back at when the Emancipation Proclamation was passed, the Black community in this country held less than 1% of the nation's wealth. That's not surprising to anyone. You fast forward now, right, 150 years past the Civil Rights era, Reconstruction, the national response to the murder of George Floyd, that number has barely budged by just 2%.
That's wild.
That's ownership of this country. That's the freedom and the autonomy that comes with it. So we need to be thinking about closing that racial wealth gap in terms of what it means every day for Black families, home ownership, the ability to start a business, the ability to pass something on to your children, but also about the freedom and the power that wealth gives to our community.
Right. And I want to also ask you, what are you hearing from business and city leaders in your community related to challenges and also opportunities? Because with challenges,
Yes.
we also have to think about opportunities
Yes.
that will drive equitable growth locally.
Yeah, so you already named one of the big challenges right now is that we are living in a moment,
Yes.
right? The ability to actually invest in those wealth building avenues for Black folks, for Black women particularly, we're seeing that immense clawback. At the same time, what we're seeing is that a lot of that comes from a complete misunderstanding of who is to benefit from us actually closing these racial economic disparities, right? I would say if there is one silver lining of this moment, let it be that nobody can walk away from this last year and say, we believe that corporate DEI, or we believe that affirmative action was only for Black folks or Black and brown folks or Black, brown folks and women, right? Because the data is just so explicit at this point, and this is data out of McKinsey and out of Citi, right? Telling us that if we can close the racial wealth gap, if we can close those economic gaps, we would have seen $16 trillion added to the US GDP. Like, that ain't the Black GDP,
Right.
right? That's not the Black and brown GDP. That is the United States GDP, and looking ahead that we could add 1.5 trillion merely by 2028. So when we think about opportunities, we have to look, as you said, to the folks who have said, I understand the moment. I also understand the benefit to the economy for everybody, to business for everybody, and are doubling down. So one of the things that we've been able to do with the partnership of Mastercard as one of the very early investors in the program was to build something called the Center for Black Entrepreneurship.
Okay.
A concrete driver of actual solutions that are building wealth for Black folks today. So the CBE is a partnership with Morehouse and Spelman colleges, and it's focused on training and creating an ecosystem of support for the next generation of Black HBCU entrepreneurs. So we're providing the kind of curriculum and co-curriculars, mentors, access to capital, and then we've built a venture fund connected to it that's actually directing that capital into the hands of those business leaders as they are coming out of those HBCUs. And as we as BEA think about it, what we know is that those solutions are on the ground making meaning for students now, right? We're also able to leverage all those learnings and go and take them and advocate from a policy perspective. So we're seeing those solutions move from Wall Street to Washington, boardrooms to state houses across the country.
And what about the growth in HBCUs? Let's talk about that, the popularity of HBCUs. I feel like that's also been unprecedented.
I think so. And go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to piggyback on what Samantha was saying. A concrete example, if we talk about like how this is good for everybody, because it's like who benefits. Samantha, you took all my stats. Shout out
I can tell you guys work closely together.
But shout out to Shelley at McKinsey, whose team does all these
That's
phenomenal reports. But I just want to highlight a couple concrete things. It's good that people are actually realizing HBCUs as the bedrock and just the bevy of wealth and ingenuity that's there. And so when we started this, we looked at, as I said, two things. How can we be authentic and working through partners? Because I believe proximity is key. People who are proximate to the problem are also proximate to the solution, right? So we don't do anything without our partners and our local partners. And so we are very committed to inclusive innovation. What does that mean? That means tech, all the emerging tech, all the buzzwords you hear. So AI, Web3, all of those things have to have diversity of people actually leading them.
Yes.
And not just race, gender, diversity of education, life experience, et cetera. Because if we're just gonna build in the bias that we have, if not. And so we worked with Howard University and we helped them set up a center for applied science and data analytics. And in this center, the students get to focus on algorithmic bias in financial services, which is dear to our heart,
So
and
important.
healthcare, right? How do you decide who gets a ventilator and who didn't during COVID? How do you decide who gets a loan? The other thing I'll mention is AUC. AUC DSI is what it's called. But basically, it's a program that's across 40 HBCUs that allows professors and students to get trained up in data science. The one thing we did specifically is we put a person there in our partnership, so when the industry calls trying to find talent from HBCU, there's somebody there to answer it.
Yes.
The reason I'm mentioning those two things is it's a pipeline. We can't say there's no one to hire or there's not talent because we're helping to stand that up. So again, who's benefiting? Technology's benefiting, the workforce is benefiting. We're creating wealth, but it's this virtual cycle because we're investing in HBCUs, but ultimately that investment will pay us forward, and the technology that we'll see created will be mind-blowing. And we know that when different communities touch tech and innovation, you solve problems you wouldn't solve before, right? We all know the stats about how diverse companies are more successful.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Diverse leaders lead differently.
That's right.
And so just keep hammering on this idea that we are investing in a future we all want to see. And these investments today will pay off later, but we have to keep doing it with the mindset of this benefits all of us.
That's right.
Yes.
Salah, I'm so glad you brought that up too, as far as somebody to answer the phone to say, okay, we have people here, students here who can fit that description.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people would say, I can't find somebody. I wanted to hire a Black person for that, but I couldn't find anybody who could do that. And when I did my coffee shop, we were really intentional on hiring Black and brown people to build the space, but also for the vendors that are inside of that space. And actually, it was hard to narrow it down when we went out there and looked, like as far as an architect, all of those things. It was like, okay, there are so many qualified people. We got a lot of great plans that were submitted to us. And it was like, I don't know who to go with. So that is definitely a myth, I feel like. When
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah,
right?
it's a great problem to have. I was like, man, I don't know who to choose, but I just want to, put that out there because people will act like it's so hard to find. But if someone's answering the phone and can direct you into the right space, that helps a lot also. And I know that In Solidarity is a place-based initiative with a very intentional strategy to leverage Mastercard's assets to strengthen the efforts of local organizations and decision makers. So why and how did Mastercard decide to adopt this approach?
Yeah, and I talked a little bit about the why, it is an important puzzle piece in inclusive growth. We're global. And if you look around the world, some of the commitments I talked about, like SMEs and women in different markets, here we had to address the wealth gap. Just like we have a Hispanic strategy, just like we're focused on veterans and women, all people have to kind of play together in the economy. So that part was easy, and the why. And it was just a good defining moment to do that. I call it like a clarion call. Like we stepped up to the call because we had that in our DNA. The how was really the partners that I talked about. So part of the reason part of the way we picked the local strategy in 7 different cities, we looked at where is there a need, where can we have an impact, and where is our skill set needed and can be catalytic with the administration that's there. And that's how we picked the cities. That's how we came up with Atlanta. We have a lot of stuff in Atlanta.
Atlanta is popping.
It is popping. I'll give one example of a program that I think really exemplifies in solidarity, because like you said, rightly so, it is the inclusion I've been talking about, but also our company's assets. So money is great. We all know that.
Yeah,
like we're not going to deny the bag.
Yeah, capital is important.
It's important, but also assets and like know-how and resources.
Right.
So we have a program called Start Path. It's an award-winning program. The Start Path team's amazing. And it's for entrepreneurs. And the secret sauce to ours, there's a lot of like startup programs, incubator, is that once you get through, you should have a commercial agreement with Mastercard or one of our partners.
Oh, wow.
And that's like game changing, right?
That's amazing.
For
That is absolutely.
startups.
Yeah.
And we're big and we could be challenging to work with for smaller companies. So this is like someone holding your hand.
Yes.
And so when we started in Solidarity, we started this for underrepresented founders to actually be in the program. We made it a little earlier because we know angel capital doesn't function the same way. And a little bit of hand-holding through like, every Start Path program is. And to me, that's a great example because it meets the moment and the need. We know that entrepreneurs and funders, especially in tech and fintech, underrepresented, don't get the funding, don't get the resources they need. We have those resources, so we expose them to all sorts of technical tools. But then we also know that the commercial part is important too.
Right.
So we were able to take a program we had, meet the need in terms of the population we're focused on, but we also win too because the fintechs make us smarter. They help us with those commercial deals we talked about. Those are services we can now offer we couldn't offer
That's
before.
right.
Maybe we don't have to acquire another company.
Right.
And it puts us on the forward kind of front row of emerging technology. So I always use that example.
So win,
because
win,
it's
win.
like inside,
Yeah.
right,
That is
that's
right.
what it is. It's our assets,
That's
it's
right.
our award-winning program, it's our technology, but it's also these amazing entrepreneurs who maybe wouldn't have gotten a shot otherwise.
Yes.
Man, that everybody eats.
That is the goal.
Now, Rachel, let's get to you. And I just want to say, like, I've interviewed Rachel a couple of times. Amazing, like, read her books. My friends, when I had her on, were like, oh my God, I love her, I love her. But so it's amazing to have you here too. And the mission of your company, Hello 7, is to teach historically excluded groups how to end the cycle of financial stress and also how to build generational wealth.
Yes.
How important is generational wealth? And what strategies can you share on how to build it within the Black community?
Yes. Well, generational wealth, I think, is crucial. It's about starting from something rather than starting from zero or starting from negative, right? With your net worth. So it means that you have something to pass along to the next generation and they get a head start rather than like I started with $350,000 in student loan debt, right? So my negative net worth, that was a terrifying number. Which is not negative no more.
There we go.
Okay.
But
That's a great. I remember when I paid off my student loan.
yes,
I was
it's an
like,
exciting moment.
And that's
But yes, generational wealth gives us options and it gives the next generation options. Like we want to change these numbers and we want it to not be in slow motion, which is what it is now.
Right.
So if we can build more than we need, right? That's the goal.
That's right.
Having more than we owe, right? If we can be in that position, we have options and then the next generation also has options. So how do we actually do that? What are the actual practical steps? Because it's all nice to say generational wealth, entrepreneurship, la, la, la. But people are like, okay, but how do I do it? So what we do at Hello 7 is we assume that the entrepreneurs that are coming to us have no network. They did not go to pedigree schools necessarily. They didn't grow up in fancy neighborhoods, right? And so they have no network. They have no capital to start with. So where do you start when you have zero? Because that's where a lot of people are starting. That is the realistic situation that they're in, and maybe they have a job and it's just enough to get by. So what do you actually do? So what we teach them how to do is exactly what I did, because this is my journey as well, is what skills and natural talents do I already have? What creativity do I already possess, right? What am I naturally good at? And how can I use those skills to create a company, right? I believe that entrepreneurship is going to be the great equalizer. This is how we're going to close the wealth gap. That's what I believe. And so how do we get more people becoming entrepreneurs, even if they have no access to capital, which is the situation, especially for most Black people, right? And so that's what we're teaching them how to do. So one of the first things we do with folks is like make them do a personality assessment. We have them doing all these different tests to figure out like, what are you good at, right? What have you always been good at since you were a kid? What interests you? What are you passionate about? And how can we take that and turn it into usually a service business? Because they don't have the capital to invest in products, right? Or building a software immediately. So we help them build a service business, and then they can take the money from that service business and use that to build products or to build tech if that's what they want to do eventually. So that's how we do it. We have a 12-month program. We work with people, and a lot of times people will stay in the program for up to 3 years. And our goal is to get them to 7 figures, $1 million in annual revenue. That is the goal, and we're like relentless about that. And people are like, can't I just build a business that's 250? No, okay? Because we're trying to solve a bigger problem here, right? Because now, you know, you're providing a workspace for you can hire employees, right? That maybe are not being able to work somewhere else or not being able to find an inclusive environment to work in. That's how I felt after law school. There were not a lot of great law firms for me to work at where I felt seen, you know what I mean? And I felt like I could be myself. And so being able to provide that workplace, now you have money to work with, and you can use that money to now say, okay, I can invest in my team. I can invest in marketing. I can continue to grow this business beyond. I think $1 million is where we start to have options as entrepreneurs, and it's doable and it's possible. And so what we did was build a framework. We call it the Grow Scale, which is a step-by-step process to how do you go from $0 with zero resources to $1 million business, right? And it seems impossible, but it's very doable.
Yes.
We have so many success stories. Some of our clients have 8-figure businesses now.
Okay.
And so, you know, one of the things that we want to do is get more corporate sponsorship so that for those clients that are in our community who can't afford the programming, that we're able to provide funding for them to be able to go through it. But that's how we're doing it to help to close this wealth gap, and just, you know, 100 clients at a time, 200 clients at a time, slowly but surely. And each one of them is building amazing businesses that are mission driven. Some of them are building affordable housing. Some of them, like you are, right? Yeah. Some of them are, you know, building amazing software companies. And so I feel like my job is to support the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs by showing them how to get this money, you know? And it's like, if everybody else says no, I'm going to show you how to pull it out of yourself, you know?
Oh, I like that. And you know, to that point, let's talk about community. And I will ask this to the table, and how important community has been to be able to achieve, and how important that is for entrepreneurs, because it is a space that can be super stressful mentally. And when things are stressful mentally, it can take a toll on your health. Yes. It can also take a toll on your business. And so, and your social life. And so,
your marriage, your everything.
Yeah, no, honestly,
your sleep.
It can. It is honestly like, people don't talk about that as much as we see a lot of you know, businesses that have been successful, but then there's some that haven't been. Yeah. And then we also know, as founders of businesses, we have to take care of ourselves. And community can be really helpful, but sometimes we also can have a tendency to isolate ourselves too.
Yes.
And so I just want to talk about that experience. And, you know, we can start with you, Samantha, when we think about
well,
she's like, yes, ready.
So I'm excited about this one because I realized, so before we were on, we were all talking about having Bed-Stuy connections, all of us, right? And this question makes me think about Tompkins Avenue. Okay. So even if you're not from New York, if you're listening, you know about Bed-Stuy, right? And you probably know that like many neighborhoods, Black neighborhoods across the country, Bed-Stuy has been rapidly gentrifying.
Yes.
But within Bed-Stuy, as it gentrifies, there's Tompkins Avenue, which is all Black everything still in terms of its business owners. And really, it's Black girl magic, right? Because it's primarily Black women who are owning the businesses. So when COVID hit, and as we all remember, COVID so quickly brought business to its knees, right? And doubly brought Black businesses to their knees. What happened on Tompkins Avenue was a great example of how community is so critical at every point, right, to entrepreneurship. So the head of the Tompkins Avenue Business Association brought everyone together very quickly and said, we're going to work together on getting the PPP loans, right? We're going to help each other out. We're going to share knowledge and resources. We're going to make phone calls together. We're going to hold each other accountable. And said, your business, right, used to be about selling dresses. Now we're going to figure out how you turn it into making masks. Before the decisions were made about bringing food outside, it was how do we think about bringing our food services, our juice bars, right, to actually be able to give folks food to go. And what that ended up meaning was that while businesses were crumbling, on Tompkins Avenue, so many were thriving,
Right.
Wow.
right? And that example of what it looks like to be, yes, thinking about not just what the entrepreneurship means for wealth building for yourself, but for your neighbor, right?
Yes.
And for your community really resonates, of course, in those times of deep, deep challenge, but I think also every day, right? Like we know the
Yes.
multiplier effect that Black entrepreneurs have. It's not just about the business for self, the business for family. It's about those hires you make, right? And it's
Yes.
about how that creates the kind of wealth for your community, the wealth for your neighborhood, right? The wealth for your town, your city, that's actually going to be what drives that generational wealth and closing of the racial wealth gap that we've been talking about.
Yeah, no, Tompkins
I love
Avenue is
that.
lit. Life Wellness is a space, and I just want to shout them out. It is a business on Tompkins. Shout out to Khadijah. And they do acupuncture, and she was explaining to me how people from the neighborhood who have never tried things like that.
Yes.
She was like, it's nice when you see like the dude from the corner come in, and he's like, yo, I'm gonna
That's
try
right.
to, yeah. And things like that, can really like take away a lot of the stress. Even taking care of our physical
That's right.
Yes.
means a lot. And when you get that needle in the middle of your forehead, and
It all goes away.
Yeah, and you
Yes.
just feel the stress going away, at least temporarily. But Seale, let's talk about that, with you when it comes to supporting these entrepreneurs mentally, because having a sense of community as well. In solidarity is all about being in solidarity. So let's discuss what there's different programs for different needs as well. So let's discuss some of
Yeah.
what can happen.
And can I brag about a business too?
Yes,
Which is-
please.
Which
We love
I'm
it.
one of my favorite things I love doing. An organization. So we have the pleasure of supporting an organization called Our Village United. I don't know if anyone's heard of Dr. Key in Atlanta doing amazing stuff. And part of her program, so she supports entrepreneurs. And so she has a space in Pond City Market in Atlanta. You walk in, it is a beautiful space. All the businesses on her shelves, I think she has about 250, I'm not getting that wrong, are all Black owned.
Oh, wow.
But that's
love
not the
that.
point. It's just gorgeous. You will shop and spend all your money. But I'm mentioning her because as part of her curriculum, it always has been is community building
Yes.
and mental wellness. And so in the programs that she does, and she's national now, and the partnerships that we have supporting those programs, part of the reason we loved it is because the entrepreneurship journey is difficult,
Yes.
challenging. You always hear about that. But what are you
Yes.
doing about
That's
it?
right.
So as part of her curriculum and the amazing work she does, you get a counselor. You actually address your mental wellness. It's not a by the way, it's not kind of to the side. You actually get someone you work with one-on-one for your mental wellness. And if you talk to the programs, the businesses that have gone through the program, they love that and the community. So she's very, very big on community. And she has a high success rate. So it works.
Yes.
The other thing I want to brag about is community is important, but it's also important to be able to reach outside your community and bring resources in.
Okay.
Yes.
And so one of the things we've done that I am very proud of is we have a small business AI chatbot. So, like you can type a question in, it talks back to you, but it is inclusive by design. So our marketing team is partnered across the organization and actually is buying data sets and data from sources that aren't usually fed in to this
Yes.
AI and algorithm. So from Blavity, I'm sure you all know
Yes.
Blavity.
Gravity.
From Black media outlets, from Hispanic. So you can reach outside your community when you need it, but you're not met with something that's foreign.
Yes.
So imagine having something that talks back to you that's representative,
Right.
that understands you.
That's right.
Right.
And you can bring those resources back into the community. So I'm very proud of the AI chatbot that we're doing. And again, it's supporting small businesses,
Yes.
which small businesses are half of the US GDP. Almost half of everyone employed is employed by a small business, 33 million across the country. And no surprise, one of the fastest growing segments in small business is Black owned.
Hey.
Yes.
So why wouldn't
Black
you support
women
the
owned
Black
too.
women.
Yes.
right? So why wouldn't you support the community? So we've been able to use AI, that sounds scary to people, but make it inclusive,
That's
make
right.
it representative for the community.
Yes. Well, that's because, Black women who are building businesses, right? So many of them are not able to get beyond $100,000, right?
Yes.
70% of women-owned businesses, period, never get beyond $100,000.
Or a certain amount of employees.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
And that is the key point, right? Like when you start hiring employees, that's when you're going to scale.
Yes.
The more team you build, right? This is a team building exercise, right? Entrepreneurship. And I think the fear around leadership and all of that can cause that. So AI is one of the most important tools that's available now because now you need less team. And if you have very limited resources, it's almost can be like having a team member. We use it on our team. We have a full-time copywriter, but the copywriter, we don't need 3, right? We can have 2 because these copywriters, the third copywriter is AI, and they use that as a tool to make their work go faster. So that is an incredible resource available for small businesses so that they can do more with less because they're having to do more with less. They have no choice but to do more with less. So I think it's so important. But can I answer your question about community?
Oh yeah, please.
Because I'm definitely team community.
Yeah, we know.
Team community. I see myself as a community builder, and that's what we do at Hello 7. So we have a community of thousands of entrepreneurs, and it's an ecosystem. And I explain to them, like, we actually have a directory that we've created where we're like, what are your skill sets? Who do you know? What are your offers, right? So that they can hire each other. So that if they're looking for a lawyer or an accountant or a graphic designer or whatever for their business, they're first going to the community to say, let me hire another Black woman. Let me hire another woman of color, right? To support my company. And so that way, everybody is winning, that win-win-win, where we're all hiring each other. And then the other piece to it that is so incredibly important is just having someone to cheer you on, because it's so easy to believe, right? Like all of the messages, not all, but a lot of the messages we get in the world don't show us out here winning, right?
Yeah.
Or if they do, it's only in very specific ways, right? And so we need to see examples of people winning. We need to be able to say, I'm having a rough day. I just lost a big client. I don't know what I'm going to do. Where everybody's like, I'm going to intro you to this person. I got you. Let's get on the phone, right? Like, and you have a cheer squad immediately available 24/7. And then to speak to counselors, we've had therapists on our team for years because it is so incredibly important. Yes, I had a therapist and I was like, hey girl, do you think you can help my people out? And so I brought her in onto the team so that she could be meeting with our, and so we've kept a therapist on our team for many, many years because the mental health piece, right? Yeah. Making sure everybody is staying positive, dealing with the stories that are in their head, right? Those limiting beliefs that are making them think they can't do it. All of that is so important. It's all part of the journey, right? We cannot have wealth without health first. If we're not in the right mind, we're not going to be able to do our best work. So,
and things will always go wrong.
Yes.
Like there is never going to be
there are going to be more things that go wrong than go right. But those few things that go right.
It's such a blessing when something great happens.
Yes.
It's been 10 bad things in a row. Right. And then you're like, today was a good day.
That's right, because that's what we need. We need them to not give up. Yeah. So it's like, how can we surround them with community and support so that they don't give up? Because it's a journey of resiliency. And who knows better than that? That's Black people, right? So we know how to be resilient. That's right. And so being resilient in the entrepreneurial journey and not quitting on themselves is so crucial, because then we get to that point. A lot of times people quit and it's like, it's right around the corner.
Yes. You were right there.
You're just one win away, one message away, right? You're so close. So that's our goal, is to keep them motivated and keep moving forward for as long as possible.
And to that point, I also want to always encourage people to take advantage of resources that are there, because sometimes it's not just only focusing on your business, but what are some of the resources available that we don't even know about?
Yes.
And so that's why it's really important to make sure that we spread the word when we hear about something that could be beneficial. I love in my network, I have friends who will be like, girl, you see this? They have this grant for this for you. You should apply for this. And to be able to spread that around, because sometimes there's grants that people don't even apply for, or programs that you may not know about, and resources that are available that are free, or also can get you some money that we are not taking advantage of.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that we encourage people to do that, no matter what point you're at in your business. If it's a startup, that's or somebody that's trying to scale their business. I know In Solidarity has different programs for different needs for people.
Yeah, and I love that, because let's be resilient, but let's be resourced.
Yes.
Like one can't replace the
Correct.
other, right? And I love giving people resources. So if you go on my LinkedIn page, I actually have a post about small business resources, and then also just resources in terms of economic mobility. Just search Salagos I think I have a red shirt on, smiling. Corporate profile. But some that I'll mention here one is digital doors. And so we have a program inside Mastercard where you can get on, you can set up a business, you can get cybersecurity. A lot of people don't realize how many attacks there are on small
We
business.
saw that when I was in the airport the other day.
Oh my God.
That's no joke right now.
Now imagine if you're a
This can
small
happen.
business.
Yeah.
I think the average cybersecurity attack costs a small business $200,000. Who
Sheesh,
can
we
afford
don't have
that?
it.
I'm telling you.
So if you go on to digital doors, you can get cybersecurity information. You can do like a little test to do a health score. So everything you need to set up a business, and it's free. I'll also say Strive USA is our small business program in general, MasterCard. Go on the website, you can get resources also. And then don't discount your local partners. Like we've said local, but local is so important. So if you go on In Solidarity, if you just search In Solidarity on the MasterCard website, we have all of our local partners listed. There are people like Samantha, like the New Orleans Business Alliance, like Dr. Key in Atlanta, Operation Hope, et cetera. And those organizations have a lot of good resources also.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
And you know what else I noticed too when we were talking about community? Pinky from Slutty Vegan.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw she does these things where if there's a business, she'll
Yes.
tell everybody
To do a
purchase
community
from this
raise,
business,
right,
to
exactly.
do a community. It's not like someone's giving you
Yeah.
anything. It's like you're selling your product.
You're
Yes.
supporting.
And supporting a business. And I think those things are really important. And even just posting a business. What I've realized, I do a Shine a Light segment on my show. And so every morning we shine a light on somebody. And a lot of times we shine a light on a different business and they've seen a bump,
Yes.
automatically. And it's helped so much.
Right. And that connects to what we were talking about earlier, right? Because as you said, this is not asking people to give something, right? This is about saying this is a product that you're going to want and you're putting a light on that product. Because one of the big pieces that we need to change in all this narrative conversation we've been having is thinking about investing in Black people as charity, right?
Yes.
Nah.
No.
This is about saying these are the products you want, right? These are the businesses that are at the forefront, right? These are the leaders that you want to be alongside of. These are the community leaders that you want to be partnering with. And so that idea, what you're doing, what Pinky's doing is just saying, let me just show you what you haven't seen yet,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That is a benefit to you, is the way that we start to also get people to see that this is about growing business, bottom line for everyone, growth of the economy for everyone.
And there's this sign in Dr. Key's shop that says support is a verb.
Yeah.
There we go.
Support
Yes.
Black businesses.
There we go.
And there's value in supporting the businesses, but I think in every community, but in our community too, there's a study that Nielsen did called In the Bag in 2019. And I don't know who we need to talk to get another one done, but it was phenomenal because it reminded us that the Black buying power is projected to be 1.8 trillion this year. If you think about tech, 96% of Black households own a smartphone. That is higher than the national average. Black households are 37% more likely to try new tech and 2.5 times more likely to actually get our financial services like digital or through apps.
Yes.
So whether it is investing in Black businesses or just in the community, when you talk about the advancement of tech or early adopters, there is so much value of investing
That's
in
right.
because of what you can get out of it.
Yes. Absolutely. I think in addition to access to capital, Black entrepreneurs need visibility, right? They're like, listen, I don't even want a loan. I don't want an investor. I just want more people to buy my stuff,
want customers.
right?
Yes.
Like, exactly.
And they will love it and spread the word.
Exactly. So how do I get in front of more people, right? How can I stop being the world's best kept secret, right?
Right.
And so that's what we do too, is like on our podcast, we feature our clients and, tell people about them, their different expertise.
Yes.
That's why we do the directory.
Yes.
But it's like, I'm always thinking about what are some more ways, because
Right.
marketing is expensive.
That's
And
right.
so
It
if you don't
is.
have a lot of capital.
Everyone can't hire
That's
a
right.
publicist.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
So what can we do to
Yes.
create more visibility for these entrepreneurs
Yeah.
as well?
And you asked us early on, Angela, what connects the dots between all the pieces of this conversation? We talked about is this idea of demystifying, right? Black wealth. I think what you're saying now demystifies this idea of who can actually play a role here, right?
Yes.
Like you can be MasterCard and you can be Seale to play this incredible role, right? You also don't have to be, right? You can be somebody who has a big following, right, on Instagram, and you can be somebody who is showcasing a Black business and creating the decrease in their marketing costs. And so this has got to be a team sport in the way that we're
Yes.
saying, and we all play different roles. But if we're really going to move this mountain that has been, stuck and keep us at this bottom of this racial wealth gap for generations, right? Not only is it possible for everyone to play a role, it's going to take all of us.
Yes.
And I think that's another piece of what we need to demystify is the role that everybody, an individual and
Yeah.
institution, can have in this.
I think
Yes.
before we call it like being a I call it being like a translator and a tour guide.
Yeah.
For people who maybe don't know how to, I don't know, work with a big corporation,
Right.
or to a BEA or write a book. I think these is examples, or have their own show,
Yes.
right? These are all examples of the puzzle pieces we put together. And I think the example that we can give, one of the things I love about the work inside the company is we have other partners and customers saying, well, how did you do it?
Yeah.
Other private sector partners saying, well, we want to do something similar. How do we? Whether it's a Center for Inclusive Growth where I sit, where it's corporate philanthropy, but we figured out kind of how to bring like the business in and assets together. So I think if we all stand up as examples of like pieces of this puzzle, like you so rightly said, I think that's how you move it.
Yeah.
And when it moves for us in this community, it moves for everybody.
That's right.
Yes. I love that. I think buying power is so crucial. And that's one of the things that I challenged, like all of the people who follow me. I have a lot of friends and entrepreneurs who are very wealthy. And I challenge them, I want you to look at your P&L and see how much of that is going to a Black-owned business.
That's right.
Right.
And I want to challenge you to make it a larger part.
Yes.
At least 20% of
Yes.
the money that you're spending to run your
Yes.
business, put it into a Black company. There's great Black tech, like you mentioned, for
That's
like
right.
your scheduling, right?
Yes.
For different software
Yes.
that you use for email marketing, all these different things. How can you source that from a Black source?
That's right.
Yeah.
And how can you make sure that those businesses are in those high growth, high margins that are actually going to build that wealth, right?
Yes.
So let's not just talk about, if you're a company who's supplying your cups, let's talk about who your attorneys are.
Yes.
Right? Let's talk about who your accountants are.
That's right.
As you said, Angela, let's talk about who your architects are.
Exactly.
Right? So that we make sure that we are thinking about this on the whole scale and really leaning into those businesses that are going to grow wealth for themselves and for the community.
Yes.
And referencing them for, okay, I want to give this recommendation
Yes.
for the person who I use. It's so
using
important.
your platform.
yes.
Well, this was definitely a priceless conversation. Honestly, like I had a great time. I feel like I'm forever a student, and I always say that.
Yes.
I'm always learning things. Yesterday I was at another event and I was talking to a woman who won a pitch competition. And I'm like, how did you do it? Because that's something I know, like my strengths, I know my weaknesses, and I always am trying to work on them. And so for me, I'm always asking questions. I never feel like my questions are stupid. I want to make sure that I'm always learning. I do some real estate too, like we discussed. I made sure that I went and got my real estate license. I took the courses online and did that. And I do think it's always important as an entrepreneur to always be learning and always be
Agreed.
growing in that space, but also reaching out too. And that's why I love that we were able to sit down and have this priceless conversation in solidarity
Yes.
with Mastercard. Thank you so much for bringing us together as well, Salah. Like, this is amazing for
Thank you guys
our
for
audience.
being here. Like this conversation, I'm like, do we have to stop?
I know.
It's been great.
Oh, we're gonna
Thank
keep
you
it
guys.
going.
Thank you.
I'm like, I'm going to watch it again so I could take notes of all the
There we go.
organizations you mentioned.
And
Like-
how can everybody find everyone here? Rachel, let's start with you.
Yeah, so my company is Hello7. You can find us at hello7.co. And I'm on Instagram, Rach Rogers ESQ, dropping gems every day. And check out the Hello7 podcast as well, wherever you watch podcasts. And of course, buy the book, We Should All Be Millionaires, or get it from your library, because it's giving you the step-by-step blueprint of how I did it so that you can do it too.
Okay.
And you can find me at the blackeconomicalliance.org and also our Center for Black Entrepreneurship, where we have resources and opportunities for entrepreneurs at cbecenter.org.
And that is Samantha Tweedy, by the way. Okay.
Yes.
Salah Goss.
Everything that I mentioned, most things are on our website. So I encourage people to go to the Mastercard website. On there, you'll find a dedicated page in Solidarity that links to all of our partners and our programs. And then my LinkedIn is just Salah Goss. I think there's only one on there.
I don't know another one.
And I have resources, like I talked about, for economic mobility and small business. And if there's something I said that you have a question about or want to be connected to, just send me a message there.
All right, perfect.
I
And
love
remember,
that.
guys, do not get in your own way.
Yes.
Right.
Make sure you go ahead and make that leap, because you'll regret not doing anything. I'd rather see you make some motion than not do a thing.
Yes.
All right, it is way up.